There is a well-known saying in Judaism that when one is faced with only two options of only bad or worse, one should always choose bad. And this saying is no more well illustrated than in one of the most dramatic actions undertaken by a man during the Roman siege of Jerusalem under Vespasian. In dire situations, sometimes an act to preserve what little that remains may enable you to stay alive and fight another day. Join me as we look at the life and teachings of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was the youngest and yet most distinguished student of Hillel the Elder and existed at an extremely dark time in Jewish history. He has been called the father of wisdom and the father of generations of scholars because he ensured the continuation of Jewish scholarship after Jerusalem fell to Rome in 70 CE. Some have stated that ben Zakkai was a pacifist, but this is not correct. To say this would mean that he is anti-war, and Hashem is certainly not anti-war, as he commanded the nation of Israel to engage in combat many times in the nation's formative years. Rabban ben Zakkai was rather a man of practicality. He knew that Jerusalem would fall due to the sins of the nation, so he embarked upon a cunning plan to preserve not only the Torah, but rescue the wisest men of the nation. This action not only preserved the Davidic line, but preserved the prestige of the Torah itself. But before we get into this story, let's look at some personal characteristics of this man that I found fascinating. Ben Zakkai never spoke in a casual manner. All his speech was perfectly measured and spoken for a purpose. He never walked more than 6 feet without wearing tefillin, and he was able to control his thoughts with the utmost precision, never allowing his thoughts to drift into inappropriate matters. He would always be the first to arrive in a place of learning, and he never fell asleep there. And he was always the last to leave the house of study, never leaving the premises if someone was staying back. Hillel the Elder was an enormous influence on him, and he was one of 80 students, of which 30 could merit the sun to stand still for them, and another 30 had the merit to be on the same level as Moshe Rabbeinu. It is said that of these, Rabban ben Zakkai was the least of them, possibly meaning that he was actually the greatest, referring to his humility. If he was indeed the least, this is enough to send shivers down your spine. So what happened with Rabban ben Zakkai during the siege of Jerusalem? Well, around the year 70 CE, Jerusalem was in the grip of a terrible famine, and it was surrounded by powerful Roman legions under the command of Vespasian. Abba Sikra, the head of the Bironim, a group of extremist Jewish zealots, was the brother-in-law of Yochanan ben Zakkai, of whom the latter requested a secret meeting. Yochanan said to him, "How long are you going to continue to destroy the world by famine?" Abba Zikra answered, "What can I do? The situation is out of my control. If I say anything opposing the ideas of my comrades, they will kill me." So Rabban Yochanan told his brother-in-law to devise a plan to enable him to leave the city, to negotiate with the Romans, and bypass the tight watch of the Brioni. His brother-in-law proposed that the great rabbi feign death and have his students carry his body out of Jerusalem in a coffin to be buried outside the city. With his students Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua acting as pallbearers, the coffin approached the Brioni manned guard post just within the walls of Jerusalem. The guards wanted to plunge their swords into the coffin to make sure that they were not being tricked, but the students said, "The Romans will say that they are stabbing their leader." The guards then wanted to push the coffin hard to see if anyone inside would cry out. Again, the students quick-wittedly told them that if they did that, the hated Romans would say, "The Jews are pushing the body of their leader." The Brioni guard opened the gate and reluctantly let the small burial party through. When the Jewish party reached the Roman camp, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai emerged from the coffin and greeted the general with the words, "Peace be unto you, O king." To which Vespasian responded, "You have incurred the death penalty twice. First, you have called me king. I am not a king. And second, if I am indeed the king, why have you not come out to me earlier to show me the proper respect?" Ben Zakkai answered, "I knew you had to be king because our prophets foretold that the temple will fall only to the hands of a king. And the reason I haven't come out to you until now is that we are plagued by violent extremists within the city who would not let me out." At this point, an imperial messenger arrived from Rome and announced, "Arise, for the emperor has died, and the senators have decided to make you, Vespasian, general of the legions of Rome, the new emperor." On hearing this news, Vespasian was putting on his boots, and he found his second boot wasn't able to fit his foot. Rabbi Yochanan witnessed the new emperor's discomfort and told him not to be concerned, because the source of the problem was that he had just received wonderful news, and the natural response of the body under those circumstances is to swell. The cure would be to have someone whom Vespasian disliked come before him, which would induce the opposite reaction in his body, causing his foot to shrink, allowing his boot to fit. He brought forward a prisoner, and after a few moments, his foot was now able to accommodate his boot. Vespasian was very impressed with this bold elder's wisdom and agreed to grant him 3 requests. Rabbi Yochanan responded with this historic threefold request. Number 1, that the Romans guarantee the safety of all the scholars to Yavne, where the new Sanhedrin would be located. Number 2, that the Romans guarantee the survival of the family of Rabban Gamaliel, a descendant of the house of David. And number 3, that the Romans allow their physicians to restore the health of Rabbi Zadok, who had fasted for 40 years to pray for the safety of the city and the temple. Apparently, Rabban Yochanan felt that the presence of Rabbi Zadok would be necessary to guarantee the maintenance of the Jewish spirit in the face of the overwhelming catastrophe about to befall the nation. This wise Jewish sage knew that the events had gone too far to repel the Roman armies. Therefore, to preserve the Torah, he bargained for a community of Torah learning to be established elsewhere. Without this man's quick thinking and cunning, the Jews and the Torah would have been completely extinguished from the world. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Insight into the Jewish Sages. Bye for now. Hey, before you go, if you like this series and you want to find out much more, check out our books, All Lights On in the Master's House, Lightning from the Master's House, Flying Chariot, Fallen Dragon, and Is Alcoholic. All available on Amazon.com and other online bookstores, and help us to continue to spread the word. Also check out our website, netzrumantasee.com, where we have many teachings and resources on a myriad of subjects that will enlighten and enhance your walk. Bye for now.